is pre-algebra lesson 6-7, percents and equations. Commission. Commission is pay based upon how much you sell. For example, some people work as car salesmen, which means they really only get paid if they sell a car. They get paid a certain percentage of whatever the car was worth. If they sell a $10,000 car and they get 1% commission on that $10,000 car, then they are going to earn $100 of commission. Most salespeople earn anywhere between 3 and 5% commission. I'm not sure exactly, but there are quite a few different professions that work on commission. Insurance salesmen work on commission. Some people in the mall actually work on commission. They get paid a small salary, plus they get commissions, which is why sometimes they'll go into a store and every employee wants to sell you something really quickly, and you can't seem to get away from them. It's because they get paid based on how much they sell. Now, the last lesson we learned how to solve percent problems by writing a proportion. Today we're going to learn how to solve percent problems by writing an equation. Some people like proportions better, some people like equations better. It doesn't really matter which one you like better. You need to learn how to solve both ways, because sometimes it's going to be easier to solve it as a proportion, sometimes it's going to be easier to solve it as an equation. And in algebra, we do more things with equations than we do proportions, so it's good to be familiar with both. When you use a percent in an equation, the very first thing you need to make sure you pay very close attention to is you have to first write your percent as a decimal. Okay, you must change all your percents to decimals before you can solve your equations. And that's a step that people tend to forget, which is why I think writing a proportion is a little bit easier, because you don't have to remember that step. Okay, let's take a look at this first problem. We're going to write and solve an equation to solve these two problems right here. We'll start off with these two. What is 35% of 84? Literally, we can translate this word for word. What is, we don't know, so that becomes our variable. Okay? Is means equals. In mathematics, is normally means equals. 35% will translate that to a decimal, 0.35. Of means multiply, so 84. So we have x equals 0.35 times 84. That's our equation. To solve it, we just take 0.35 multiplied by 84. So x, in this case, equals 29.4. And then we look to see that it's reasonable. What is 35% of 84? Well, if we took 84 and divided it by 3, it'd be 28. 35% is slightly over 33%, so our number is very close, so this seems like a reasonable answer. Number 2, what percent of 26 is 65? Now this one would be really easy to put into a proportion, but we need to put it into an equation. What percent becomes our variable? Because we don't know it. We don't know what this is, so this becomes our variable. Of, again, multiplication. 26 stays as 26, is an equal sign, and 65 stays as 65. Now me personally, I don't like it when my variable comes before my constant, so you can rewrite this as 26 times x, or 26x, equals 65. So there's my equation. A little neater, a little easier to work with. Doesn't really make it more or less correct. To solve for x, divide by 26. If I take 65 and I divide by 26, I get x equals 2.5. If you were to stop there, you would be in trouble, because it asks for what percent, and we have a decimal. So we must change this decimal to a percent. Remember, to change a decimal to a percent, you move the decimal point 2 places to the right and add your percent sign. So if I was to do that, x is going to equal 250%. Okay, and that is very reasonable, because we look at it, what percent of 26 is 65? 26 would be 100% of 26. 52 would be 200% of 26. 65 is over 200% of 26 because it's over 52. So 250% seems reasonable and logical here. Number 3, 0.96 is what percent of 10? Right? Again, we can directly write this into an equation. 0.96 becomes 0.96 is means equals what percent is our variable? Of means multiply, and 10 is 10. Right? Again, I can clean this up if I would like. 0.96 equals 10x. That's a little easier to work with, a little neater to deal with. Divide by 10, divide by 10. 0.96 divided by 10, x equals 0.096. Okay? Now remember, again, it's asking for a percent. So we need to convert this to a percent by moving the decimal point 2 places to the right. So this would be 9.6%. Always double check to make sure that you don't have to move your decimal point when you are done with your problem. Number 4, 19.2 is 32% of what? And they can write these problems any way they want. You just need to learn how to interpret them. So 19.2 is means equals 32%. I need to change that to a decimal if I'm going to use it in this problem. So 0.32 of what just basically means times my variable. So I have 19.2 equals 0.32x. To solve, divide by 0.32. 19.2 divided by 0.32 is 60. So x will equal 60. I don't need to add a percent sign, subtract a percent sign, or move any decimals, so I am done. Now, we talked earlier about commission, so I'm going to talk about commission here. A car salesman makes 6.5% commission on each car he sells. How much does he make on a $35,000 car sale? Okay, so he's going to, basically what this means is we need to know what is 6.5% of 35,000. Okay, and if you can take this big giant sentence, 2 sentences here, and change it into what is, of course, that's a terrible looking 6. What is 6.5% of 35,000? That's what we're looking for. This becomes a variable equals 6.5% as a decimal, 0.65 times 35,000. So if we take 35,000 and multiply it by 0.065, that was really bad. I put my 0 there and then I didn't even use it. 2 places to the left, so it's 0.065. Okay, if I take the 35,000 multiplied by 0.065, the car salesman is going to make $2,275. So you can clearly see why salespeople try to get you to buy things if they work on commission. Since this is a word problem, remember we need to write it in a complete sentence. The salesman makes $2,275. Which means if he sold a car every day for about that price, he'd be rich. But it's not every day a car salesman sells a car. Let's look at number 6. During a telephone survey, 414 people, or 46% of those called, said they were watching station RFGT at the time of the call. How many people were called? So again, we're going to try to get that big long 2 sentences converted into one little phrase. Okay? So in other words, we need to know 414 is 46% of what number? 414 is 46% of what number? So there's our phrase that we can now transfer into an equation. 414 stays as 414. Becomes our equal sign. 46% as a decimal. 0.46 of what number becomes our variable. I'm going to use Q just because I want to change these up a little bit. So in order to solve for Q, I need to divide by 0.46. if I take 414 and I divide that by 0.46, I will get 900. So how many people were called? 900 people were called. Okay. And last but not least, we should look at our answer and see if it makes sense. 46% is close to 50%. Double 414, you get 828. So yeah, it seems reasonable because it would make it a little bit higher. So 900 people seems like a reasonable answer. Whether or not you prefer proportions or equations, you need to learn how to write both. On a quiz or a test, unless I specifically tell you you have to write an equation or you have to write a proportion, you can choose which one you would like to write. Sometimes I write proportions, sometimes I write equations, because some problems are easier to write in an equation, and some problems are easier to write in a proportion. The more familiar you are with both ways, you will soon find that either way is just as easy.